Is it possible to create a complete fantasy football team using astrology? The short answer is probably not, but I think the long answer is a bit more interesting than that. Like I could sit here and jab for 2 hours about ADPs, decaying peak value, or random stats from the next-gen stat API, but in the end, all those things had led me here. So today, we're gonna do something different. Today, we're gonna give into the dark cards and search for that league-winning team not in data or in the feeds of TikTok gurus, but in the stars. So join me in this journey as we discover which signs make for better football players, if team performance is influenced in any way by the zodiac compatibility of its players, and last but not least, what does the stars have in store for the top 10 draft picks of this year. Have you ever wondered why astrology is considered a pseudoscience instead of not science at all? Astrology is considered a pseudoscience because it presents itself as having scientific credibility but lacks the empirical evidence, testability, and methodological rigor required for true scientific inquiry. Now that we know why, at least on paper, astrology doesn't work, let's talk about how it actually works. Little did you know, it turns out that a lot of real-life astronomy and math goes into making astrology work. Most of us are familiar with our sun sign. It's the one linked to the day and month of your birth. We've all changed it in our Tinder profile to match the hot local Leos in our area. However, the sun sign is just the tip of the iceberg. Astrology not only considers the position of the sun in the sky to make predictions, but everything that happens in the sky at a specific time, regardless if it's visible or not. In addition to zodiac signs, astrology divides the sky into 12 sections called houses. Each house represents different areas of life, such as relationship, career, and personal growth. The placement of planets in these houses is believed to influence those aspects of your life. A birth chart is a detailed snapshot of the sky at the time of your birth. It includes the position of the sun, moon, planets, and other key positions in relation to the 12 zodiac signs and houses. This is the reason why you call your mom from the bar at 2 in the morning to ask her if she remembers the exact hour of your birth. Your mom remembers the name of every single doctor that helped in the delivery, while your dad, if you were lucky, remembers the type of bagel he had while pretending to help. All these tools are finally combined by astrologers in order to create personalized predictions or insights based on your birth chart, or as we commonly know them, horoscopes. Throughout my extensive research, I found that each sign is associated to certain personality traits, so here's what I learned from each one of them. Aries is that one friend that argues with you only because he enjoys seeing you get mad. Taurus, the type of people that would marry themselves if they had a chance. Gemini, two-faced professional gaslighters. Cancer, remember that scene where Tinkerbell dies from lack of attention? Well, that. Leo, they suffer from a severe case of main character syndrome. Virgo, the type of people whose dream job is to work in consulting. Libra, textbook definition of narcissists. Scorpio, that one chick that always wears pink on Wednesdays. Sagittarius, essentially Summer from the movie 500 Days of Summer. Capricorn, basically sociopaths. Aquarius, the real-life version of this annoying character. And finally Pisces, they think they're super quirky but in reality are just cringe. Theater kids, essentially. Alright, so all what we need to do in order to perform this analysis is to get the personal information of every single NFL player, along with their fantasy points, assign them their corresponding zodiac signs, and then go through the data to identify patterns. This should be easy, right? Right? Despite what YouTube thinks, I still believe this is a data analysis channel, so I will walk you through how I got this data. Pro Football Reference has this players section containing a list with the names of every single player that has ever made it into the NFL. The players are alphabetically divided by the first letter of their last name in pages indexed using that letter in the URL. If you click on the link, you go to a page with each player's personal information, including fantasy points. My plan was simple, create two scrappers, one that gets the 8 tags URLs from each letter's list of players, and a second scrapper that collects the personal information from the player's URLs. However, there is a catch. Since part of Pro Football Reference's business model is to sell data, if you want to get data directly from them, you either have to pay them $1,000 or scrape the data yourself. But the use of bots to scrap data is restricted to 10 requests per minute. If you break this rule, you get time out for an entire day, unable to make any further requests. The scrap list with the names of every single NFL player contains around 2,700 entries, which means that at a rate of 10 scrap players per minute, it would take around 40 hours and whatever this is in minutes of non-stop scrapping in order to get all the players' data. However, there are always ways to reduce the list. First, we only need the information of the players with positions that are relevant to fantasy football, meaning quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We can also eliminate players that didn't manage to play in the league for the average 3.3 years. Finally, only the players active after 2010 have fantasy point stats in their profile, so I only have to scrap 13 years of data. All of these measures reduce the list to only around 1,000 players, representing about 2 hours of scraping time. After some trial and error, getting indefinitely blocked from making requests to the server and running the code from every single one of my friends' houses, I was able to finally create a dataset containing each player's current team, name, position, birthplace, birthday, career fantasy points, and the amount of points they made in the 2023 season. I also found a dataset containing the birthdays of all the players in the 2023 season, so we will use that as fresh data. Now, let's take a look. Now, full disclosure, the dataset is not as complete as I wanted it to be, with some important players probably missing in each position, and for some reason I only managed to collect the data up to the letter W. But this is the best I could do. Anyway, here is a graph showing the percentage of players belonging to each sign since 2010. If signs were perfectly distributed, each would represent approximately 8.33%. We'll establish a representation threshold of 1.67 or 20% of 8.33, meaning any sign with less than 6.66% is underrepresented and any sign with more than 10% is overrepresented. As we can see in the overall distribution, Scorpio is slightly overrepresented and Cancer is slightly underrepresented. With this in mind, we can have a look at the zodiac distribution within different positions. The wide receiver distribution is similar to the overall distribution, except this time Taurus is underrepresented and Scorpio is slightly overrepresented. This distribution matches the fantasy points distribution per sign among wide receivers, with Scorpio representing 12.6% of all wide receivers' fantasy points. Things get a bit more interesting at the running back and tight end positions. For running backs, Taurus is overrepresented and Aries is underrepresented. Notably, Leos hold 12.8% of the total fantasy points among running backs despite only having a 9.7% representation. Some examples of Leo running backs available this season are Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon, two solid picks in my opinion. Other solid sign picks would be Taurus and Aquarius, which combined represent a quarter of all fantasy points. Some Aquarius and Taurus running backs in this season are Bijan Robinson, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, James Conner, Khalil Herbert, Tony Pollard, Javonte Williams, and Austin Eckler. In the case of tight ends, Libras are underrepresented with a mere 5.5% but make up for 10.6% of all fantasy points. The list of available Libra tight ends for this season includes Kyle Pitts, Mike Gesicki, Luke Farrell, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce. Needless to say, you probably want a Libra at the tight end position in your team. Another solid sign pick for the tight end position would be Scorpio with names like Dawson Knox, Pat Freiermuth, Austin Hooper, and Noah Fant. Cancer, which is historically the second sign with the most fantasy points at the tight end position, has 0 representatives in the current season. As we can see, most positions have a pretty equal percentage in terms of representation and fantasy points, but this isn't the case for quarterbacks in the last 13 years. While the sign representation remains relatively equal, except for Cancer, which is severely underrepresented, this isn't the case when looking at the distribution of fantasy points throughout the last 13 years, where we can see a clear overrepresentation of Leo, Sagittarius, and Taurus quarterback points. The interesting thing is where these points come from. Leo represents 16.5% of all fantasy points, but what's impressive is that 32% of those points, or around 6,000 points, come from Tom Brady alone. Similarly, Aaron Rodgers represents 30% of Sagittarius points, or around 5,000 points, being accompanied in this list by big names such as Russell Wilson, Philip Rivers, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Joe Burrow. Toro's biggest representative is Matt Ryan, followed by Cam Newton and Josh Allen. We can see how both Manning brothers are at the top players of their respective signs. We can also see Michael B carrying the Virgos and the Gemini not really having much to show for. Something important to note here is that these over-under representations are a product of what we pseudostatisticians call the law of large numbers. This law states that as the number of observations increases, the average of the results will more closely approximate the expected value. In simpler terms, with more players, the distribution of zodiac signs tends to even out, getting closer to that ideal 8.33% representation. So the important thing to remember here is to draft Leo, Taurus or Aquarius running backs, get a Libra tight end, and stay away from Cancer and Gemini quarterbacks. But as we all know, players do not exist in a vacuum and rely on team effort to be successful. So let's take a look at how each team is doing in terms of sign compatibility. Back when I first started playing this game, I used to believe that good fantasy football players could not come from bad teams. However, as time passed, I realized this line of thought was wrong. Take for instance the Minnesota Vikings, a team of great fantasy football players that cannot win a playoff game to save their lives. This made me wonder, what's the correlation between real-life team performance and individual fantasy points? And to what extent is there a correlation between sign compatibility and fantasy points production? Well, let's find out. In case you don't know, signs don't have the same level of compatibility between each other. Some sign combinations produce great marriage, while others make for good friends, and some just keep filling the pockets of divorce lawyers and therapists. I'm looking at you, Gemini and Leos. While some people take this compatibility more serious than others, there doesn't seem to be much evidence to support them. But where would be the fun in that? The way astrologists calculate these compatibilities in its simplest form is by assigning each sign an element and reflecting on how well these elements interact. A more advanced approach is to create a sinister chart that compares two birth charts. All is good and well, however, if we want to know the impact this zodiac compatibility has over a team's success, we need a way to assign a numerical value to different compatibility levels. After searching for a while, I found two charts expressing sign compatibilities in percentage. I know these are technically oriented towards romantic relationships, but I do think winning a Super Bowl is harder than establishing a long-lasting relationship. Say what you want about dating, but I never had to do it while 11 angry dudes try their best to prevent me from succeeding. What kind of think of it? As you can see, these two charts have wildly different values, so I decided to go with this one that seems to have a little more of a scientific method behind it. With the percentages in hand, I gathered data from Pro Football Reference on the starting players for each team in offensive positions, including the offensive line and head coach data. Calculating the synergy coefficient for each team is quite simple. First, we need to group all the players by team. Second, we need to calculate the compatibility scores of each possible pair within the team. And third, we need to get the average compatibility score per team by adding all scores and dividing them by the number of pairs. The result shows that before firing Josh McDaniels, the Las Vegas Raiders had the best zodiac synergy score in all the NFL, followed by the immaculate bias of the 2023 Pittsburgh Steelers and the NFL champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Interestingly, it shows that the San Francisco 49ers were just 0.35 bye points away from winning the Super Bowl. The rest of the top 10 include teams like the Atlanta Falcons, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens, the Chicago Bears, and Aaron Rodgers-less New York Jets, and the 2023 season revelation, the Houston Texans. The middle section is closely grouped, while the bottom features the Dallas Cowboys, the Buffalo Bills, to the surprise of absolutely no one, the Washington Commanders, which funny enough find themselves at the bottom of the fantasy points and win record lists, the We All Got Tua's Back Miami Dolphins, and the We Don't Need Russell Wilson Seattle Seahawks. At first glance, it seems the compatibility score is somehow connected to the team's performance, right? We got the Super Bowl contenders in the top 4, solid teams in the top 10, meh teams in the middle, and the Commanders at the bottom. However, running a correlation matrix between a team's fantasy points and compatibility yields a low correlation of 0.17. In contrast, the correlation coefficient between fantasy points and win record is 0.80, indicating a strong correlation. Graphing both shows the compatibility score scatterplot are all over the place, meanwhile the win record scatterplot gets closer to that sweet linear function. And in case you're wondering what the correlation between compatibility scores and win record is, let me tell you that is a bit more complicated. In order to find this answer, you would have to go into every single individual match, get both the offense and defense starters, and then run the same calculations in order to get the compatibility scores and then create a new win-loss record based on these scores, so have fun with that. If there is one thing that I always struggle when it comes to fantasy football, is choosing my first round pick. Don't believe me? Here's a quick rundown of my last 5 first round picks. 2019, I didn't know what I was doing, so I believed every single pundit that told me David Johnson was him, only to have him way by week 5. In 2020, I made the exact same mistake as the Kansas City Chiefs and selected Clyde Edwards-Helaire as my first rounder. In 2021, I thought I'd struck gold by selecting Derrick Henry before he sadly went down with a season-ending foot injury. 2022, I did my homework. I learned how to use the Next Gen Stats API, I made charts, Jupyter notebooks, and read every single camp report under the sun. It was clear as day for me. Najee Harris was about to have one of the best fantasy football seasons in recent history. Except this didn't happen. Turns out the Steelers played better under a semi-retired Big Ben than with this guy on the field. And finally, last year I picked Nick Chubb as my first rounder, who sadly went down with a terrible season-ending injury in week 2. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again but expecting different results. So let's see what the stars have to say about the top 10 fantasy football draft picks. In order to make precise individual predictions, we need to generate the respective birth charts. Generating astrological birth charts involves a complex process that combines astronomy, mathematics, and ancient astrological principles. At the heart of this practice is the calculation of the precise positions of celestial bodies, the sun, moon, planets, and other significant points at the exact moment and location of a person's birth. The process is deeply intricate, as even small changes in time and place can significantly alter the chart's interpretation, making the creation of an accurate and meaningful birth chart a task that demands both precision and expertise that I do not possess. Lucky for me, if you need something done in Python, no matter how bizarre the task is, there is already a library that does it for you. A sort of Rule 34, but for Python libraries if you wish. It also needs the exact hour and minute of birth, however I couldn't get those, so I had to generate some random ones. Now comes the hard part, which is to make sense of all of this. I went to Fiverr in the hopes to find an astrologer that could help me interpret all 10 birth charts, but I quickly realized that most of them focus on answering more personal, career, financial questions. I then tried to find studies that combine astrology and sports and found these 2 sources. One of them was this guy that seemed to know how to combine astrology with football in order to make predictions, however his fees were a bit high for me. The second source was this book called Sports Astrology written by John Farley. The problem with this one is that it is not a beginner-friendly book, and it is also written in this weird way where it also tries to be a fantasy novel, so it was a DNF for me. I even tried learning how to interpret these things myself and spent 10 hours learning the ancient ways of the stars, only to come to the conclusion that Justin Jefferson is getting pregnant. Congratulations. Defeated and desperate, I turn to the one person that is always there for me and gives me solace in times of despair. And that's when I learned that ChatGPT knows how to interpret birth charts. All I needed to do was to provide a CSV file that contained all relevant astronomy events of the following 4 months, as well as the birth chart information of each one of the players in the following format. So without further ado, let's take a look at these ChatGPT astrology field predictions for the top 10 candidates of this year's fantasy football draft. Let's begin with the projected 10th overall pick according to the Fantasy Football Pros website, Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's chart reveals a dynamic individual with a strong leadership potential, emotional depth, and talent for communication. His Sun and Venus in Leo suggest a warm, charismatic personality, while his Moon in Aries provides the drive and independence to pursue his goals with passion. However, Garrett may face challenges related to emotional intensity, career stability, and group dynamics. By focusing on personal growth, learning to manage his emotions constructively, and developing patience and persistence, he can navigate these challenges and continue to thrive. In number 10 comes AJ Brown, whose chart reveals a complex and multifaceted individual with a strong emotional connection to his community and a desire for stability and security. His nurturing nature and ability to connect with others make him a valuable team player, while his ground emotional approach helps him stay focused and persistent. However, AJ may face challenges related to communication, work habits, and deep emotional experiences. By focusing on personal growth and developing resilience, he can navigate these challenges and continue to thrive both personally and professionally. His ability to inspire and uplift others, combined with his strong sense of purpose, suggests that he has the potential to be a significant influence on his team and his community. Next up, we got Bijan Robinson, whose chart reveals a dynamic and multifaceted individual with a blend of visionary thinking, strong leadership qualities, and grounded emotional nature. His innovative mindset and ability to take bold actions make him a valuable asset on the field, particularly in situations that require quick thinking and adaptability. However, he may face challenges related to communication, decision-making, and managing his resources, which could require extra effort and introspection. Amon-Ra St. Brown chart reveals a player with intense focus, discipline, and a strong competitive drive. His ability to form meaningful partnerships and work effectively within a team is highlighted, although he may face some challenges in fully realizing this potential due to the retrograde influences of Jupiter and Saturn. His strategic mind, combined with a deep emotional commitment to his craft, suggests that he is poised to be a key player for his team, with the potential for a standout performance, especially when the stakes are high. If he can navigate the potential challenges of instability in his personal life and fully tap into his inner resilience, Amon-Ra could have a very successful season. Breece Hall's 2024 season is poised to be one of growth, visibility, and significant impact. With a strong emphasis on his 10th house of career, he is likely to emerge as a key player known for his versatility, strategic mind, and hard work. However, the presence of several retrograde planets indicate that he may face some challenges, particularly in maintaining consistent energy and dealing with unexpected changes. If Breece can navigate these challenges with patience and resilience, he could see substantial success and recognition this season. Justin Jefferson's 2024 season is likely to be marked by standout performances and moments of brilliance, thanks to his natural talent and favorable planetary influence in his chart. While there are challenges, particularly with retrograde planets and the influence of Saturn, his ability to adapt and his strong drive for success should help him overcome these obstacles. Expect him to continue being a key player for his team with potential for significant achievements if he navigates these season challenges with resilience and focus. Ja'Marr Chase is likely to have a strong and impactful season in 2024. His competitive spirit, intuition, and leadership qualities will be key factor in his success. While there might be some challenges during the retrograde periods, his determination and team support should help him overcome them. Expect Ja'Marr to be a standout player this season with potential for significant achievements and recognition. Tyreek Hill is likely to have a dynamic and impactful season in 2024. His chart suggests several strengths that should help him excel, particularly his intuitive playstyle, determination, and ability to make explosive plays in high-pressure situations. His influence within the team could grow, and he might take on a more significant leadership role. However, there are also potential challenges. The retrograde periods, especially Mars retrograde in October and Mercury retrograde in December, could introduce moments of frustration, miscommunication, or setbacks. These periods might require Tyreek to be more strategic, patient, and mindful of his actions on and off the field. Overall, while there may be some obstacles to overcome, his natural talent, determination, and leadership abilities suggest that he will perform well this season. His success will be likely marked by key moments of brilliance and a strong influence within this team. CeeDee Lamb is likely to have a solid season with the potential for a standout performance, especially if he can harness his natural leadership and adapt to the challenges presented by the retrograde periods. While there may be some up and downs, his overall contribution to the team should be significant, making him one of the key players to watch. And finally, we have the projected top 1 draft pick, Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey has the potential for a strong season, especially if he manages his energy and avoids overexertion. The supportive Jupiter aspects indicate resilience, so even if he faces challenges, he's likely to overcome them and finish the season on a high note. Staying disciplined, particularly during the Mars squares, and leveraging the positive influence of Jupiter for recovery and growth will be crucial. If he can maintain a balance between pushing hard and knowing when to rest, he should have a good season overall. In conclusion, my journey through the realms of fantasy football and astrology has been a wild one. While the results might not have been conclusive and the methods unorthodox, this experiment has shown that even in the most data-driven of pursuits, there is room for a little magic and mystery, and that in the end, we're all trying, and often failing, to predict the future. So, as I head into this year's draft, I'll keep the stars aligned and my fingers crossed, hoping the cosmic forces will finally guide me to fantasy football glory. As always, you can find the data and Jupiter notebooks in my Kaggle profile, in case you want to read the in-depth players' predictions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.